Bonjour les amis. Welcome back to Generate Her. Here I am again talking to you from Paris in March, one of my favorite months of the year. And it always hasn't been. It's a month I've really come to appreciate as I've gotten older because I feel like this is a month where we really get to see change, where we really get to see spring coming in. We get to see the first blooms. Here in France, we're going to see the first strawberries. We always have Gariguette, which are the first strawberries that hit the market. So I feel like this is really a month of change and transformation. And it's a month of gardening. You've heard me talk about that and the importance of your jardin secret. And March is also a month where a few people I love have their birthdays. So for so many reasons, I love this month. But it's also one of my most challenging months. It's one of my most challenging. And isn't that the dichotomy of life? That two things can exist at the same time. Welcome to Generate Her. I'm Jane Bertch. I spent the first half of my life working in a corporate organization, and then I decided to trade that all in to become an entrepreneur. Yes, here in your favorite city of Paris, France. And today, I hope I'm a guide on your journey to personal reinvention and transformation. So why is March challenging? It wasn't always. Like it wasn't always a favorite. But every March, I can't help but think back to a really difficult time. And this March in particular marks 5 years from when the world changed. And that world changed because of COVID. And that was really such a difficult time for us globally. And I came out relatively unscathed, I must say. I did lose somebody who was dear, sadly. But I was in good health. My mother was fine. My immediate family was fine. But nonetheless, it was probably one of the most challenging periods I've been through. And it reminded me of, we all go through those periods over and over to different degrees. And how do we cope with them? Because they'll continue to happen. We will continue to have those moments in life that really make us dig deep for faith and hope. So how do we get through them? We all have our coping mechanisms, but I wanted to share some of my tips. And I didn't make these myself. These are scientifically proven to be effective tips to help you navigate very difficult times. So let's talk about them. Number 1, patience and acceptance. For someone who attempts to be strong, and I say attempt because it doesn't always work that way, I like to fix things. I like to have answers. I like to find solutions. And I don't like to take all day doing it. I feel like the universe prioritizes speed. Good or bad, that's how I see things. And having patience and acceptance when things are going wrong is very challenging. But when I accept that this is what's happening and this is where we are, and I have to be patient to come to the end of this, I can finally see my way through. So, number 1, when you're faced with a very, very difficult time, you just first have to accept and acknowledge that it's there. And banging your head against the wall and hoping for things to be different might not advance you. Number 2, focus on what you can control. If I go back to that time 5 years ago, when we started to realize that the world was changing, our lives were changing, our businesses were changing, I felt so out of control with everything. I didn't have the answers. And when you're the head of the organization and people are coming to you for answers, that's incredibly challenging. So I had to be vulnerable, admit that I didn't have them, and really focus on what I could control. And the things I could control was my reaction to the world around me. I could control small bits of my business, which meant we could pivot into different business directions, not always for monetary reasons, more for building your morale to keep active. I could control my schedule day to day. I could control what time I woke up. I could control how long I went for a run. Even though I will admit that I cheated, in Paris, we actually had a curfew where we could only leave the house for 1 hour a day and 1 kilometer. And for me, cheating, I'll admit it, I'm not a cheater, but in this case, I would sometimes go further than that 1 kilometer because that gave me a little sense of control in my day to day. So as long as I wasn't hurting anyone, and yes, I was breaking the rule, and sometimes that breaking the rule exhilarated me. Another little example of that is on our permission slips, you had to list the time that you left the house. And again, you could only go once a day. So I would list the time at 7:50 a.m. I would go out for a walk. And thank goodness we used military time because I could use that same permission slip later in the afternoon, put a 1 in front of the 7, and now it's 5:50. So this is not suggesting that you should cheat and be malevolent. This is just suggesting that find those little ways that exhilarate you, that give you a sense of the things you can control. That's so very important when you're in a time of a difficult moment and trying to navigate through that. Number 3, mindfulness and grounding. Now, this has always been a challenge for me, but it's something I did seek out different resources on what does that mean and how do I employ it? And you can look online and find plenty of ideas on different ways that you can practice mindfulness and grounding and see what works for you. Some examples are deep breathing, perhaps doing a body scan where you lay still and you close your eyes and you go through your bodies bit by bit and see how it feels. Is it tense? Is it loose? Can you make it tense? Can you loosen it? And what about mindful walking? We walk a lot every day, just getting back and forth for all the obligations we have. But have you ever stopped and just taken each step and felt that step? That's a really incredible way to ground you and make you present. So a tip for navigating a difficult moment is practicing mindfulness. Number 4, social support and community. We are creatures of community. We are pack animals. And even though I will admit I'm an introvert at heart, I have a beautiful small band of people that are my anchors. And I will say now with Instagram, even though I do have a troubled relationship with it because sometimes I see the side of it that isn't so healthy for us, I have met so many wonderful people that I now include in that community. But when you are in a time of distress and discomfort, Being able to call on that community is everything. And even if you don't call on them, there's a comfort in feeling that you are a part of something. One small example, again, during that period 5 years ago, every evening at 8 p.m., people would hang out of their windows and bang on their pots and pans. And it was meant to be in solidarity for the hospitals and the nurses under the pressures that they were dealing with day to day. But this became so important for all of us. It was the moment where we could look across the street at our neighbors and wave, people we'd never spoken to, people we'd probably never passed in the street. But we'd look for them every evening and they'd look for us. And it was a really, really special bonding moment. So try to find those areas where you have social and community bonding in whatever form it may come. Number 5, reframe negative thoughts. This is a hard one. I find sometimes I'm overly critical. I'm overly critical about things which can lead me into a negative thought. So this just isn't in times for distress for me. This is everyday business. This is business as usual in Jane's brain, is not getting overly complex in my mind, not looking at what could go wrong, but look at what could go right. So reframing, a very simple example of reframing is going from the thought, I failed, to the thought, I learned new things that will help make my future endeavors successful. What a change that is. What a change that is. And in fact, it makes me think of something I just saw on Instagram. It's a gentleman I'm watching. His name is Cedric. He is a fabulous photographer and he shares beautiful pictures he takes, but then he shares a lot about him and his process. And he just recently posted where he loves to stop friends or talk to people on the street and ask them what they're wearing. And he'd got himself set up with this camera that he can stick on a window and record himself. And something happened during that process which distracted him, so he didn't turn on his microphone. And he went through the whole interview process. So I can imagine his disappointment when he finally went to go look at this great thing that he created and realized that there's no audio. And he pivoted. He reframed and he posted that, telling everybody what happened and narrated it. And narrated exactly what was happening when and what he was saying and what his friend was saying and how beautiful she was in her sweater. And I actually think I appreciated it more. I loved hearing his voice. And I love that he didn't let that become a negative thought. He turned it into a beautiful piece of art. So reframe those negative thoughts. Another one for you, acts of kindness. I try to consciously think of how to help people, but I don't always have time to do so. And that's something I'd like to work on, because I don't have to tell you how wonderful it feels when you have been of service to somebody, when you have been a part of somebody's positive direction forward. And that positive direction forward through your act of kindness could just be that you smiled at them, you saw them, you said thank you. When you were paying for something at a cash register, you unrolled your money and you handed it to the person on the other side rather than crumpling it up and putting it out on the register in front of them. Spoiler, I used to work at the Museum of Science and Industry, and I was a cashier. So that's my example of an act of kindness, is treating people with respect. So think about when you're in those dark points and you're feeling lost and dismayed, ask yourself how you can help others, and that will change your perspective. Healthy coping mechanisms is one of them, and they're, no surprise, journaling, exercise, finding forms of therapy. In fact, I journal daily now. And if I think back, I believe this was a practice I started 5 years ago during this very difficult time of COVID. I was in a whirlwind of questions, as all of us were. I was away from my family in Chicago. I had a business that was closed that I'd invested my whole life and identity in with no answers, which none of us had, of what the future would look like. So journaling, which I still do today, allows me to evacuate my feelings. My journaling is not my to-do list. It is not always very productive. It is me expressing how I feel. Some mornings I get up and I'm enthused. Some mornings I'm not. So what I write in my journal helps to take it out of me. And I do believe in the power of writing. And by the way, I do have a 30-day journal challenge. If anybody's interested, you can find that on my website, janebertch.com/journal. And my last one, and again, there's so many. You can find all sorts of different tips, but this one is important. It's finding moments of beauty and joy. And I want to shout out to my friend Ajri, who wrote a beautiful book here in France called Joie. I'll link to that in the show notes. And it's about every day finding and using moments to feel joyful and beautiful. And if that's using your nice china, do it. If it's lighting those candles, do it. If it's getting dressed up for yourself, do it. And I'm sure you can find more. So once you get through those tough moments, which you will. So once you get through those very difficult moments, which you will come to the other side of them. And yes, you'll be changed. But I think perhaps for the better, if you've used that time to really recenter and focus yourself. So after you go through those tough moments, here's 4 things I want you to remind yourself of. You are much stronger than you thought. You are that piece of coal that under severe pressure has come out as a diamond. You always will. You always will. You have no choice because that's the magic of you. You are much, much stronger than you ever realize. Remind yourself of that. I recently saw somebody say, I have grown through this. I've not gone through it. Isn't that the truth? Every difficult moment we've have has made us grow. We've learned things about ourselves. We've learned things about others. We've learned our ability to cope and pivot. We've learned that we can survive. We've learned that we can get out of bed on that really difficult day when we just don't think we can. And those are wonderful things to learn. Number 3, if I focus on what I can control, I can make greatness. And this I believe. If I focus on what I can control, I will make it great. So when you hone in on your circle of influence, And the small things that you can control day to day, if it's you can control putting on your socks, you're going to put them on in the most fabulous, romantic way ever. Or if you're going to make a meal for yourself, you're going to make a beautiful gastronomy meal. You're going to light candles. Take those little moments of the things you can control and you'll make them great. And afterwards, you're going to say that to yourself. I will find the things I can control, or I found, and I made them great. You're going to say to yourself, every challenge makes me a stronger person. Every challenge makes me a stronger person. If you're listening to this right now, you're already a warrior because you believe and you're curious and you want to know thoughts about how to improve. So you know, and you will say, my challenges make me a stronger person. And this last one, I thought about this. I thought about this a lot. I love the concept of a mosaic. And I believe that that's what we all are. We're a product of all of these experiences. We're like a great impressionist painting with all of these dots and colors. We're not just monotone. You're going to remind yourself and say, I am a beautiful mosaic. I'm a beautiful mosaic made up of light and dark. I'm made up of light and dark colors. I'm made up of soft, smooth pebbles, and I'm made up of shards of glass. But when all of that comes together, in the end, it's the mix of all of those pieces that make me the beautiful work of art I am. Because that's what you are. You are a beautiful work of art. So friends, just some thoughts. Again, in this beautiful month of March that I love so much, it's also a month of March that gives me pause and makes me think to a certain time. And as we know, either we mark dates or they mark us. And March will always mark me for a number of reasons, but it did make me think about all of the things we've all overcome. And we continue to do so. So I hope these are a few tips to help you the next time you get into a challenging position or you're feeling disoriented or having a really difficult moment. I hope these are a few ideas to help pull you through. And know that you do have a sense of community wherever you are. So friends, until next time, if you think somebody needs to hear this episode, please share it with them. Please do take a moment to rate it. And again, if you ever want to reach out to me, please do on my website, janebertch.com. And for those of you that need those prompts, journal prompts to help you with a morning journaling routine, you can find them on my website, janebertch.com/journal. Okay, friends, speak to you soon from Paris.